Many blessings, my loves. My name is Rebecca, and this is my report, The Pillars of the Moon. So we are in this eclipse portal. It's happening today. Can you feel it? So it'll be happening this evening for us in the GMT time zone. So before we begin, I'm just wanting to say an opening prayer. I've got my lovely candle here and burning some protective incense here. So I wanted to create a container here and connecting to the stars and my dear friends and guardians that I'm connecting with at the moment in the stars. So taking a breath together. We are connecting into the great Ursa Major the bear, feeling into that northern star, the northern part of the heavens, Polaris, and then cascading all the way down to the southernmost part of the sky, the Southern Cross, connecting to, for those of us in England, in the east, we've got Pisces and the West, Virgo. And where we celebrate our summer or winter solstice is in the Golden Gate of the Gods in Sagittarius, the galactic center. And where we celebrate our winter or summer solstice over in the silver gate of Orion's hand there at the cusp of Taurus and Gemini. So I'm wanting to connect to these four parts of the heavens at the gold and the silver gates and the Virgo and the Pisces axis, which is what we're working with today for this new moon solar eclipse. And as we're journeying into the galactic center, connecting to the Milky Way that joins Orion and Ophiuchus, Isis and Osiris, I'm feeling this big circle that goes all the way underneath as well. So we're connecting up to the Ursa Major, through Pisces and Virgo and all the way underneath. So we're making two big circles of starry magic that goes all the way above and below us. And so we're connecting here to the elements of earth, fire, air, water. And let's connect in now as well to the energy of ether, the energy of love, the energy of source that unites all the other elements. Surrounding this whole room, me, you, this whole reading with ether, with love, the strongest force that we know of. And so it is. We shall begin, my lovelies. I'm talking of supermassive black holes. The new moon solar eclipse today is happening really close to the M87, which is a powerful black hole that's in the Virgo constellation. And this is not static, it's a spiraling energy that, it breathes in plasma and material, spiraling it down and inward through this gravitational pull. And then it pauses and it stabilizes and it reorientates itself and it gestates. And then it expels and it erupts. And it emits powerful jets of plasma. It shoots it out at the speed of light. And it's such a powerful place in the sky. It's such a deep cosmic intelligence here. It's like a galactic heart or a galactic womb that pulses and beats and breathes. So when we're coming into this solar eclipse energy now, it's really powerful to really tune into this energy, this M87, and this, it's 6.5 billion times the mass of our sun. So that's kind of some perspective as to how big it is, and the power of it in what it's doing, in our solar system. So I want to bring up a picture of it as well, just so we can all kind of tune into, because when I was feeling into like what I was reading on my research around the way that it spirals one way, stabilizes, and then reverses, it did feel to me like the breath, like the inhale, the pause, and the exhale, which also mirrors the blooming seasons, doesn't it? With like the energy that comes in and then pauses and then goes out again. And so this kind of energy is very prominent through this whole cycle, with the full moon coming in Pisces joined to Ceres. So Ceres is the dwarf planet that's connected as a guardian of cycles and seasons. And so, a lot of this kind of energy can be really useful for us, as we're coming into this changing part of the year. So our autumn equinox or our spring equinox is happening tomorrow, depending on where you are in the world. But it is, for us in the Northern Hemisphere, it is tomorrow on the 22nd. And yeah, so this is like a turning point. The equinox is equal day and equal night. And then we're going to go into the darker part of the year, and then the Southern Hemisphere going to the lighter part of the year. So there is this dance, of inhale, pause, exhale, pause, inhale, pause, exhale, pause, inhale, pause. It's like there's this kind of like dance of life and death and changing. And so as the inhale, the plasma and the matter spiral down and in, it's being drawn into by the gravitational pull, gathering all of that intention and that life force down into the pause. And this is where the energy stabilizes and reverses. And this is where the transformation can gestate. And so when we think about, for us in the Northern Hemisphere, we are spiraling into the dark, at the moment, where we're coming down. And when we get to the winter solstice, it's kind of like this pause or this stabilization and this gestation in the womb of the winter. And it's reversing the energy to prepare to come up and out again into the spring. So we are now in this journey of inhaling in, whereas you in the Southern Hemisphere, you are in your spring. So you are preparing, your jets are about to erupt and your new life is going to come out into the light. So it's the opposite. So I'm going to stop sharing this screen now, because I'm going to take you over to the artwork that I've made for this cycle. So you can see that this is the solar eclipse in Virgo happening 2054 this evening. And then we have our equinox happening the day after. So I feel like it's really important that we recognize the equinox as, yes, it's a time of equal day and equal night, but it's also a time of change. It's a time of, we are holding this balanced point, but then we are ultimately shifting from where we've been to where we're going. Yeah, and it's kind of the embodiment of change. And so this is also embodied really well with, the archetypal energy of Ceres, and, the way that, Persephone, her daughter in the story, is taken into the underworld, and there's the grief and the sadness and the loss that comes with this archetype as well. But it's also like the sacredness of the change, in like it's necessary for regeneration of our environment, for the ending of an old cycle to happen, and to have the grief and the tears and the necessary pause and stillness and rest to work perfectly in timing with the cycles within us and within nature and within the cosmos. But what I'm trying to get at here is that the cycles of this incredible living, breathing cosmic engine, or the M87, is reflecting our own cycle of in and out, in and out, life and death, endings, beginnings, and so wow, so this solar eclipse happening in Virgo at the time of the equinox, it's, for those of you who are in the Southern Hemisphere, this is your spring. So the whole idea that a lot of people have around the what is it? that we have, that the idea that we have around the age that we're in is connected to where the sun rises on the spring equinox. So for those of you in the southern hemisphere, the sun is rising on the spring equinox in Virgo. So for you, your authentic truth would be that you are in the age of Virgo. You're in the age of the matriarch, of I want to say like the virgin, but the virgin, in her original pre-patriarchal meaning, is one who has choices that are her own. She is unclaimed, she is untamed, she is of wholeness, of sovereignty, she's not possessed, she is complete unto herself, and she belongs to no one. So wow, this is the original form, I feel, of Virgo. She's the high priestess, she's the herbalist, she's the midwife. she's like, she's in service to the whole. And the whole could be that whole in the Virgo constellation, and she's in service to the cycles of life and death. So wow. So we could say that as a whole earth, that those of you in the southern hemisphere, who by the way are the only ones that can see the lunar eclipse, the solar eclipse, you're in the age of Virgo. So for those of us in the northern hemisphere, we could say we're in the age of Pisces, because in spring the sun is in Pisces. But for the southern hemisphere, in autumn the sun is in Pisces. So when we're working with the cycles, we can really see that the equinoxes and the solstices right now reflect this whole cycle, because for us in the north, the winter solstice is when the sun crosses over the galactic center at the moment, and that's in early Sagittarius. So our first quarter moon, this cycle was in Sagittarius. And then for us in the northern hemisphere, our summer solstice is when the sun is coming into Gemini, the silver gate, and the last quarter moon is in Gemini at the silver gate, this cycle. So you can see how this whole cycle really reflects the wheel of the year in some way, that there is this kind of deeper knowing around, the way that things birth, things rise, things grow, things come to their fullness, and then they descend and they return and they spiral in and they die, and then they renew again. And this is also, about biodiversity in our environment and being regenerative, and I think there's so much in the current culture that we're in as a collective around this constant doing, this constant progress and growth and expansion and domination and achieving, but actually, Virgo is telling us through, the wisdom of the matriarch about cycles, about the necessity of endings, of harvest. If you don't gather the harvest, you've got no medicine. When we was all connected to the land, we was gathering the food and the herbs and the plants to cultivate it into jars and keep us going through the winter. So the Virgo energy has got a lot of wisdom, that we can really tap into through this cycle. And I feel like it will really support us to reclaim, what it is that the Virgo constellation really is. We have another new moon coming up at the next cycle that's also in Virgo, because Virgo is a huge constellation that takes, I think it's 44 days for the sun to fully go through Virgo. So the next new moon will also be in Virgo, right at the end of Virgo. So we get 2 goes at this to really, really experience it. I also wanted to acknowledge as well, a dear friend or follower of mine from my Instagram page has sent me lots of amazing information around, the Aboriginal seasons and how they're quite different from, the spring, summer, autumn, winter. And I think there was 7 seasons, if I'm correct. And, so every different place in the world has its own seasons, so if you're closer to the equator, obviously it's a lot hotter a lot more of the time, and you have the dry and the rainy seasons. And then the other end of the spectrum is the North and South Pole, where they have their own version of seasons as well. you know. So I feel like what is really kind of coming through to me about this whole cycle is about really connecting to our cycle, you know, the cycle that we're in collectively, the cycle of the nature that we're in around us, where we're at in our own cycle, you know, in our own life, and how we can use that to support us, you know. So I'm going to go over into the live sky so we can have a look at where this new moon is happening. Here we go. So yes, I've already brought up here M87. So the time I said was 8:54 tonight. And you can see the sun and the moon together as they always are at a new moon. And it's close to the south node, which is over about here in Leo. So you can see this is the M87, which I was talking about, the black hole. And you can see how closely aligned this new moon is to it, you know. So this is a really powerful alignment, and I feel like I had to mention it because, you know, it feels like really significant and important as to recognize this energy as a collective. And so when we're talking about the Virgo energy, you know, Virgo does like to refine and organize and bring kind of order to the chaos of Pisces. So when we're talking about, you know, Virgo and Pisces as a polarity, you know, really, I feel like Virgo in her highest octave is the bridge for the divine. You know, she's bringing down the spirit into the physical. And then I just get this vision of the weaver, you know, on the old, you see them in the old spinning wheels where they would spin and they'd go into trance and they're weaving worlds even, you know, like through this spinning of this web. And so Virgo is the precision to draw down what is needed into the physical form from the spiritual realms. Yes, she brings order to the chaos. She bridges heaven and earth, you know, and she can hold the structure. But the thing that also Virgo needs to also be able to hold it in softness. You know, she needs to also use the Pisces energy to also be able to feel, to use her intuition and to know when to surrender all the organization into flow. So they, you know, they really do work together, but there's also, you know, areas that we can, you know, move more into and things that we can do to soften into the need to organize and control. So Virgo's precision can be very helpful for Pisces as well, because the chaos can sometimes feel overwhelming, right? Especially as we've got Chiron and Eris very active during this cycle over in Pisces. And we have Saturn and Neptune opposing this new moon over in Pisces. So, you know, there's a lot of kind of chaos and lots of big feelings and trauma and things in the collective field. So Virgo here can be really helpful too, because she is in service to us, to our health, to our well-being, to the earth. She really wants to help, you know, so she can organize our feelings into neat little jars and label them and put them on a shelf and say, here, this is happiness and this is anger. And when you feel like this, try taking some of this, you know, and this is what she's good at. And, you know, she's the kind of the herbalist that you might go to when you've got something going on with you, and she'll give you a jar of something. And, you know, like this is kind of the energy of the old midwives and the old kind of I see it as like she's the matriarch. It just keeps coming in. She's the matriarch and she's the high priestess, and she knows how to work with the plants and nature, and she's the healer, you know, that walks through the void and she returns with the medicine. And so, yeah, I just really, I love her so much. She's good at getting things organized, but sometimes, you know, the shadow of that is that she can be overworking, or she can be very critical of herself. Um, and also, when you think about her connection to Ceres, um, and the loss of her daughter, you know, there's the grief as well and the sorrow, you know, and Sometimes the shadow can be the withholding of nourishment, the withholding of care, and or conditional care, you know. So with this full moon that will be coming up conjunct Ceres, a lot of these themes around loss, grief, return, care, support, you know, could be all be coming up into, you know, our awareness as a collective. So you can see as well that Mercury is in Virgo as well at the moment. So Mercury's quite close to this new moon, and Mercury's at home here in Virgo, so he's very happy here. You know, so this can be quite a useful time to get organized with our thoughts, with our ideas, to write a list, to write a business plan, to, you know, you could be, well, I've been writing lists everywhere, like, right, and actually getting things done on the list, you know, like this energy of when I felt the sun go into Virgo, I was literally vacuuming everything, under everything, lifting up the rugs and going, oh my gosh, look at that, you know, and my lovely husband today is out there trimming all the hedges, you know. So this energy can be very useful, but we do have to be careful not to overdo it, because Virgo can sometimes override the emotional needs and just keep going, you know, to get things done, you know, because there is a lot of hard work required of Virgo, because she's preparing, like I've said already, to get ready for the winter, you know. So when we're gathering the harvest of the year, you know, we are literally like, I mean, I've been out there collecting rose hips this morning to make a syrup, you know, so there's a lot that we could be doing with like really practical things. So use this energy to our advantage, get those things done that we've been wanting to get done, you know, maybe write a list of things that we want to do. Um, and just, yeah, also be gentle with ourselves and soft in like the way that we might try to control how quickly the list gets ticked off. You know, if it doesn't happen straight away, just forgive ourselves. This is the Pisces part of it. Be compassionate to to the work. You know, to also bring in an element of softness into all of that Virgo need to get everything sorted. Um, so you can see Venus has just crossed Regulus as well, the heart of the lion. So this is a really beautiful place for Venus to be. So there's a lot of creativity coming as well, lots of yeah, like crafting and designing, and very kind of I feel with Mercury in Virgo, very poetic. You know, it could be lots of creative writing wanting to come in, and different kind of like, it's a really good time to be kind of thinking about creativity and how we can, you know, this is talking mostly for us in the north, you know, like how we can take the harvest of the year, the creativity that has happened, and refine it and create a legacy from it, you know. So this is like the rose becoming the rose hip, and then using the rose hip to make medicine, if you know what I mean. So taking all of that into like some kind of magical thing that we could be doing. It's kind of like, okay, so this is what we've created, now let's make a plan for the future to what else we could do with that, you know, like what we could do differently next year, how could we, you know, expand it or change it or refine it. This is really good things to be kind of working on with the Virgo energy. And we have Mars as well in Virgos, and you can see there's a couple of big comets coming around in the Virgo constellation as well. We've got Atlas and we've got the Swan. So this is no coincidence either at the time of this solar eclipse that we've got these two comets coming around and very close to Spica. Spica brings a magical gift. Spica is the hand of the harvest, and Mars is a very dynamic, doing, active energy. Hence why my husband's probably out there cutting down all the hedges, you know. So really great time. The Mars wants to get busy, get doing, but you know, just to be aware that we also need to take time to take care and to not push ourselves too hard, because there could be the tendency to overdo it at this time. So I'm thinking now, whoopsie, it just did a big old flip on us. So I'm going to go jumping over into the chart now so we can have a look at the aspects of this new moon, because there's quite a lot going on. So yeah, so you can see that. Let's just do a little drawing on it. This is our 4 degrees of Virgo, very early Virgo here. And then we've got the South Node, which is in Leo. So when we're combining the energies of Leo and Virgo, this is the energy of the strength card in the tarot. Some of you who are into tarot might, be into this kind of, there's an image of the priestess holding the mouth of a lion, or I also connect it to Durga, the goddess that's often seen riding a lion. It's a really fierce energy. It's about protection. It's about strength. It's Durga is also the mother. She's a fierce protector of her children, and has, seen in the different myths of destroying demons and all of this kind of, she's very warrior-esque kind of energy. So when we're working with Virgo and Leo together, so this kind of energy feels very kind of warrior-esque kind of energy. And there's a lot of strength here as well. And yeah, so we can see I'm going to start by talking about Saturn and Neptune, who are in opposition to this new moon solar eclipse, just to start with. So the Saturn and Neptune conjunction I've talked about already a lot of my videos, so I'm not going to go over that again. But, it is about dissolving structures. It's about building our dreams. And it can bring a lot of lostness. It can bring a lot of timelessness, and so I feel like with this energy in opposition to the new moon, it could bring quite a lot of feelings of sadness, of depression, of feeling weighed down by things, or feeling heavy, feeling confused or lost. Saturn brings like a seriousness to the equation that can feel a little bit like, oh, so all of these kind of energies that are in Virgo who really want to get things done, it could feel like a lot of weight, of all of the jobs we need to do, of all of the tasks we need to complete. And this could also create, with Mercury so close by, quite a lot of nervous energy, quite a lot of overthinking, analyzing, organizing. We might be sitting up late at night thinking about all the things we have to do. And, this is kind of, can get like this. So how to work with this energy well, because Virgo is also very much about taking care and well-being. So finding a spiritual practice, this is the help of Neptune and Saturn in Pisces, a spiritual practice to support, take care of our mind, to take care of our mental health. We could be seeing a lot of mental health stuff coming up at the moment. It's definitely a time to be having conversations, maybe seeking therapy, or just writing about, our thoughts and our ideas, and but also about our troubles and the things that make us feel weighed down. It's also a great time to be working with sound through breath, through our voice. It could be through mantras or singing, and yeah, kind of devotional singing, prayers, to really kind of, like I was saying around the energy of the M87 and this inhale, exhale, like when we're exhaling the sound and our voice and these words, it's actually creating realities. So how can we consciously, use our words to create prayers and mantras for us all? So I feel like creating a practice that supports our mind and our mental well-being, it could be something as simple as, noticing when we're feeling overwhelmed or when we're feeling heavy or bogged down, and what can I do to take care of myself then? And so we can also use the energy of the earth, to find groundedness, to get our feet on the earth, to take herbal supplements. You know, if those of you who are in spring over in New Zealand, you could go and collect some of the good green herb, you know, the fresh nettles and the things that are growing now that could really nourish you. And those of us who are in autumn here, we can collect, you know, the rose hips and the berries and all of the pumpkins and the things that are going to nourish us through the winter. So really working with the Virgo energy means that we're working with the medicine of the earth, with the herbs, with our well-being. We could be seeing stuff coming up with our health, you know, especially like the changing of seasons, you know, can bring colds and coughs and things. So really just attending to our immunity, you know, through different acupuncture or whatever holistic. I feel like a real holistic approach is really supportive here with the energy of Virgo. And so yoga as well can be a really great time to be doing things like yoga, meditation, to really work with these energies, because, you know, we could be seeing ourselves slipping into different, you know, depressions or sadnesses or griefs of endings of things, you know, because eclipses always can bring, you know, the unexpected changes to the equation, you know, and they're known for that. So we can really use the energy that's available for us here, you know, to, because as well there's a grand earth trine that's happening with this new moon. I'm going to draw it out. Let me just rub out this bit so we don't get confused. Got enough confusion with this Saturn and Neptune conjunction, haven't we? Okay, so we've got a grand earth trine here. Whee! So this is with Uranus in Taurus, the Virgo solar eclipse new moon, Pluto on this cusp with Pallas Athena in Capricorn. So grand earth trines, you know, they bring a groundedness. But with the planets involved, we've got Uranus, we've got Pluto and Pallas, and we've got Virgo. So not Virgo, Sun, Moon, Mercury. So this is about reforming. This is about massive changes with Uranus and Pluto there. It's, you know, resourcefulness. It's about power, stabilizing power, you know, and reforming our strategy, Pallas Athena, you know, around the structures that are in our life. You know, so this is a massive transformative earth trine that is bringing shifts and changes to the earth. You know, we could see like the earth even shaking and rumbling with this grand earth trine that's here. So, but there's two trines. So there's actually a macabre in the chart, which is a six-pointed star. So I'm going to draw that one out as well. So the second grand trine is an air trine, and this comes from our north node here, and it's pretty much touching into Saturn and Neptune a bit as well. You can see it here. But sticking to the air energy, we've got Jupiter in Gemini. And then if we go all the way up, we can see we've got Juno in Libra and Lilith in Libra. But then there's also Vesta on this cusp of Scorpio. So it's a watery air trine. But, you know, it's going to bring some visionary ideas for community, you know, with the North Node in Aquarius and Gemini Jupiter energy. You know, this is about social media. This is about networking. This is about, you know, bringing a sense of diplomacy with the Libra energy around the shadows, Lilith, around the dark, around that which has been suppressed. It's about bringing a sense of justice and being committed to that, you know. And Vesta is devoted to the ending of old cycles of Scorpio here, to bringing about completion and endings to that which is needed. So looking at this macabre as a whole piece, it's very pretty. You know, it's like a macabre, when, you know, I've been working with this energy, really brings about the balance. It's trying to balance the opposites. It's trying to create like the balance of opposing forces, you know. So when you think about Jupiter in opposition to Pluto, which is having a massive effect throughout the next few cycles, actually, with this grand cross, which I'll talk about in a moment, you know. So this macabre here is really, because, you know, the trines are fluid energy, they move really well. So, we are trying to create regenerative energy for the earth. It's bringing shifts and changes for the earth, for the physical, and what's opposing, we've got Saturn and Neptune opposing the new moon. So like I was saying around the Virgo and Pisces axis, it's the opposing forces, or the polarity, is like logic over intuition, and the opposing forces of, Pluto and Jupiter is like power over expansion and power and authority of structures. And with Pallas Athena there, it's like strategies around that power, and really looking at the way that things are linked and connected. That's what Pallas is really good at. She's that good at seeing patterns and recognizing patterns within, authority, within the governments, within the systems of control and power and domination. So, and bringing Uranus in there to that, kind of giving it a lightning bolt, shaking it all up. And this is in trine to the new moon, so with the South Node in Leo, we're really looking at houses of power. And this is, for us in England, in the fourth house, so very much within our homes, within our, our foundations, but also, houses of leadership, so the leadership of the collective is also being brought to the surface and shaken up and bulldozed with Pluto there as well. So, this is like a regenerating our culture, I feel, is kind of like what the macabre is bringing. It's the breaking down of the old, really illuminating the power and the leadership that has been governing things. And with the Jupiter energy, it's kind of like, feels like the social media kind of like blowing things up, or the way that we might have learned things from social media, or it's like dismantling these old structures around government, authority, institutions, but also the inherited belief systems that we may have acquired from the social network. So we all have heard around, the way that, our social media and things can be controlled or manipulated for, to create forms of control around society. So all of this kind of stuff could be coming up as well, So that's the macabre. So I'm just going to erase all of that. so we can look at the next thing I wanted to talk about. Whoop. Okay, so I wanted to talk about the yod that's happening with Venus and Mars. Here's Venus in Leo, Mars in Virgo, creating a sextile, nice blue sextile here. So I'm going to try and draw a straight line so you can see. Oops, that didn't work. Oh, it doesn't always work the way I planned. There we go. So you can see the yod coming towards Saturn, Neptune with Venus and Mars. So Venus and Mars will be coming together at Venus's next star point, which will be in Sagittarius. That sounds nice, isn't it? So Venus and Mars will be coming into connection. They will be collaborating at the gate of Venus's next star point, which I think is early next year. I can't remember the date now, but so Venus and Mars are really working together here to put some pressure on Saturn and Neptune. So the apex of the yod, or the finger of God, is pointing towards Saturn and Neptune here. So Venus, like I said, very creative. Mars in Virgo is really organized and getting things, sorted out. So there's a creative sorting here that's happening with Venus and Mars working together, pushing pressure onto Saturn and Neptune. So really, what is the question here? It's like, what creatively do we value? How can we create more organization around that with Mars? Let's write a business plan. Let's write down our creative visions. with Mercury and this new moon here as well, let's write it down. Let's get it down on a piece of paper. Let's start. And this, what the direction is, what it's pointing at, is our dreams and our visions and creating a structure that supports that. So this is a pressure to like, wow, like what could we really do if we, really put our minds together and our thoughts towards what it is we want to create. We have so much power in that, to regenerate our culture, to build a new world, and to honor the seasons and cycles within, all of us within the world. So I'm going to just rub that one out so we can look at the other bits I wanted to talk about. So you can see that Jupiter is making this square to Eris and Chiron, and square to Pluto, and Pluto's in square to Mars. So as this kind of cycle unfolds, the Grand Cross is going to be coming into more like fullness as Jupiter moves around, and it's shifting, and so I think by the time we get to the next Virgo new moon, yeah, I've drawn it here, the Grand Cross is really like, poof. So I mean, Jupiter in square to Eris and Chiron, and in square to Pluto, it's really triggering trauma, and pain and wounds. And yeah, and I feel like with Jupiter in Gemini, it's really exposing, the networks and the community and the different ideas around things. And I feel like there's an exposure here around, we could feel really exposed in the wounds of the world as well. Like there's so much that we can all see when we look on the social media that brings us into this collective wound, this collective trauma that it's like we can't not see it, and it's causing a lot of collective grief. And so yeah, this energy is quite tricky. It's not an easy energy for any of us. So going back to what I was sharing around this new moon, it's kind of like finding our practice, finding what it is that supports us, because the full moon will be coming with Ceres. So like I said, there's a lot of Ceres themes: nourishment, support, care, loss, grief, trauma. It's all really present in this cycle. So the eclipses can be taking us into these places and the depths of that. And like I've said already as well, Pisces can represent chaos. Eris represents chaos, conflict, disarray. And so this is a very challenging energy, and we are being challenged to really face our shadows, to really witness our pain and our grief and our suffering as a collective, and the macabre is really here, like I've said at the beginning, the six-pointed star, to create change. And it's about reform, and it's about regeneration, our generation, and changing the culture, around care and around support. And I think something that's been really prominent with me, around this time is the way that you can see how well a culture is doing by how they take care of their mothers, their children, and their elders. So it's something that is really important and integral for me, that we honor those parts, especially because they're bringing through the new world, and also the elders hold so much wisdom, and so it's something that I'm really wanting to work with my community, to really honor the portal of life and death and the sacredness of that, and really reclaim that, to hold that in most reverence, and so when we look at the things happening in the world, it just really shows us, collectively, how we, do not have that care and that support and that nourishment for mothers and children. And it's not like the norm in our culture. So it really does feel like we are reweaving a culture around care and support and wholeness and holding, So yeah, such a big energy this, with this Jupiter coming opposing Pluto, and it's going to it's not a quick transit either. You know, with this T square to Eris and Chiron, it's going to be going on all the way till the next, you know, little while. I know the new moon, it's really, really strong. So it's a building tension, this Grand Cross energy. You can see at the time of this new moon, it's not quite a Grand Cross, but it's moving towards that. And so Eris and Chiron, Jupiter and Pluto, they're going to be holding this T square for quite a while. And all the planets that move around this point in Virgo, you know, will be coming into the other aspect of the T square throughout the cycle. You know, so you've got Mercury, you've got the moon and the sun, and you've also got Venus will be eventually moving into that Grand Cross with Jupiter, Pluto, and Eris and Chiron, you know, so lots of stuff coming up around our communication, our voice, how we express ourselves, you know, our thoughts and our ideas. And also, you know, with the sun will be coming, you know, in opposition to Chiron and Eris as well, and then Venus eventually. So lots of stuff around our identity, around who we are, you know, the way that we see ourselves. Could be like a time of real kind of the inner critic could be really strong with this, where we're really having to face a lot of stuff within, you know. And this could, you know, with the Saturn and Neptune conjunction, you know, bringing like this kind of heaviness and restrictiveness into things and feeling kind of stuck and lost. So when we're feeling like that, you know, to really to lean into what does support me, how can I support myself right now, how can I bring that in, you know, and what do I value. And these are going to be really good anchors and pillars for us throughout this time. Yeah, so let's just see. There's just so much going on. There's a T square with Venus as well. It's not a simple one, this one, this whole cycle. But anyway, so yeah, Venus in Leo is in square to Uranus and also in square to Vesta and Juno, who are on this Libra Scorpio cusp. You know, so this brings up feelings of stuff to do with relationships. Venus in square to Uranus can bring unexpected changes around our heart, around our love life, around our relationships, you know, but also brings change around, you know, we may be feeling shifts and changes around what we value, around resources, money. Could be also a time where we want to change our appearance, you know, because Venus being the lioness could be a really good time. We might feel like chopping our hair off, or, you know, there's just lots of shifts and changes around the physical and around beauty and around love. So this could be affecting us all differently depending on our own chart, you know, and what it's touching for us. But I feel like it does bring like unexpected visitors or unusual guests. You know, we could be seeing different encounters with people that we didn't expect. And, you know, when we're looking at, you know, Venus in square to Vesta and Juno, you know, it's like a real kind of connection to what we're committed to, what we're devoted to, you know, our spiritual practice. This Vesta, you know, the Vesta priestess is devoted to her spiritual practice and and the bigger vision and the devotion and the commitment here, you know, is kind of like in opposition to, well, you know, what's practical? Can we pay the bills? Like, what do I need physically? Like, you know, like, and so these energies, it's kind of like, I feel like it's taking us into this kind of dynamic of like our higher vision or our spiritual ideal kind of thing, and then the tension or the lesson is coming in like what we physically need, what we practically need, what we love, you know, in our everyday physical well-being. And so these kind of energies with Venus is kind of making us question, you know, what's more important, or what do I need more, how do I create more balance within the relationships, within, you know, my own creativity, within my physical reality, you know. And Saturn opposing this new moon can be bringing reality checks, you know, like, okay, maybe actually I need to be doing a little bit more here and a little bit less there. So as well with the equinox energy, a lot of kind of energy balancing around things that we might be doing, things that we might need to do more of or less of. So there's a lot of shuffling happening around, our, I feel like with Venus, our everyday creativity, and the things that we want to be, the things that we love and the things we want to create, and a lot to do with, I feel like, a lot could be do with our body as well and our self-worth. We could be having stuff coming through around the way that we value ourselves and our physical body, and then the needs of others with our commitment to others and the way that we may sacrifice or sabotage, to please others. So Black Moon Lilith in Libra, can be a people pleaser, to want to kind of, you know, see other people's point of view and not be so much in her own autonomy, So this kind of stuff can be all coming up with this T square. Oops. I just keep drawing all over it. Let's just get rid of that. So is that enough? Is that enough to be looking at? It's a lot, isn't it? But yes, I've spoken about Pluto square Mars, Pluto opposing Jupiter. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there for that. It's quite a lot to even be processing all of that I've shared. So you can see at the first quarter moon in Sagittarius that you've got, you see, I've drawn it out here that this Grand Cross is really becoming active because Mars is really coming into this tight square with Pluto and Jupiter and in opposition to Eris and Chiron. So like I said, like all of these, like the Sun, Mercury, and eventually Venus will be moving into this Grand Cross. So Mars will finish and then Mercury will come. But Mercury will finish and then the Sun will come. So it's kind of like, it's a process. It's a process of transformation, of wounds, of triggering, of trauma, of Jupiter, like really expanding all of our awareness around that, of really communicating from about that. You could be seeing a lot online, socially around that. People talking about trauma, people talking about wounds, people talking about, the pain and suffering of the world, rightly so. So it's kind of like exposure of that, because Pallas Athena next to Pluto really wants justice and reform, around the governmental or authoritative structures in place. Because she's really working with Pluto to, connect the dots, look at the links between things. She's really great at seeing all of the patterns and the links, that the reason why something might be like that, and then she can create a strategy to reform it. She's very resourceful, and I really in Capricorn, she really wants to work hard on that, so we could be seeing lots of activism around, these governmental structures, really wanting justice, really wanting to regenerate and nourish the brokenness, the darkness, the trauma, the wound, and it's so in Sagittarius, the first quarter moon, what's building in us is this visionary, explorative, expansive travel. We could be wanting to, network and get out there and explore, and kind of, so Ceres, who I'm just going to just rub out that Grand Cross so that we don't get confused again. Ceres, who will be with the full moon, is in square to this first quarter moon. So, like I said, Ceres has got a really big part to play in this cycle. So, we are working towards a cycle to bring more support, to bring more care to the trauma and the pain of the world and ourselves. And, I've been seeing within my community lots of stuff coming up around birth trauma, and hearing the stories of birth trauma. And so Jupiter in Gemini is a great time to talk about this birth traumas and, you know, the way that our current healthcare system is supporting us or mothers when they're giving birth, you know. And so a lot of this is coming up as well, especially in the UK, with different stuff happening within, you know, the current healthcare systems at the moment. So yeah, I feel like loads of kind of awareness coming around care and support in, you know, this build up to the full moon. So I'm going to do another report on this full moon in Pisces just to show you before I go. Yes, so the full moon is in Pisces, look, conjoined with Ceres. And then we have this yod with Uranus and Neptune opposing Mercury. I mean, I'll do a whole other report on that, so I'm not going to dive into all of that now, but just to let you know about that. And yes, so then the last quarter moon is in Gemini, and you can see the Jupiter-Pluto opposition is very strong, and the moon will be crossing over Jupiter on the 13th and 14th. And that is when Pluto stations direct. So Pluto will be at his full force. And you can see that the Grand Cross is also now with the Sun and Lilith. Oh my goodness. So you can see the ending of this cycle is got quite a lot of energy to it. I'll journey more into that in the full moon. Let's just get through the solar eclipse for now. And then our new moon in Virgo will be happening on the next new moon in Virgo, will be happening on the 21st of October. So yeah, so I think I'm going to leave it there, my loves. I think that's enough for today to be going with. Yeah, if you want to get in touch, please do reach out if you've got any questions, if you've got any feedback. I really love hearing, you know, all of your ideas and thoughts. Yeah, I do offer readings as well if anyone's interested in that. Just please subscribe and share and all the love. And yeah, new moon solar eclipse blessings, my loves. May we all find, you know, the regenerative, may we all regenerate, you know, all that we need during this time. May we find a way to nourish and take care ourselves. And yeah, sending you all so much love. Blessed be.